Hello, everybody. This is Amara Wiley, your spiritual tour guide beyond the veil, and I'm very excited to be playing in the sandbox with you guys today. What we're talking about is, uh, so the Great Awakening, which is we've entered the air age, outer planets and air signs. And I also want to talk about today Neptune in Aries. So I'm not an astrologer, and I'm just going to give us some context, and then I want to talk a little bit about mostly love deities today. But so astrologically, Neptune entered Aries in January of 2026, and it's going to be there for quite some time, till March of 2039. So we kind of are going to be knowing this energy for over a decade. This is just to give you some historical context. Other times that Neptune has been in Aries was during the Civil War in America. It was during the Reformation when Henry the VIII broke away from the Catholic Church, from Rome, and started the English Protestant church stuff. And it was about the same time when Spain invaded South America, and the Spain sort of took over the Inca capital of Cuzco, and the Inca civilization declined. So that was the time when Spain ruled in South America, which had lasting effects even today. So it was also a time when Queen Anne's War was. So that was 1697 to 1712, Neptune in Aries. So there's been all kinds of different things that happened. It's also the time when England and Scotland joined together and became one thing, Great Britain. So not all bad things, not only war, but definitely big things have happened during those times. So I know there is the appearance of war right now in the United States, and I'm not sure that there isn't always some war somewhere that the U.S. may or may not be involved in. But today, I want to talk a little bit about, in that context, about love deities and why war and love are often different aspects of the same gods and goddesses. Not always, but basically, if you look at goddesses like Inanna, who is a goddess of love and war, Freya, who is a goddess of love, but also has as one of her jobs to look over slain soldiers in her realm in Folkvanger. And there's also deities in different other cultures in Greek mythology, which many of us think of as, know from our own school experiences. Although they are separate, Aries and Aphrodite are connected by great love, and Aries is the god of war, and Aphrodite is the goddess of love. So these two concepts are often connected in mythologies across the world, in India, in Germanic culture, in Egypt. There's the idea that love and war are together, and really this has to do with the idea that love and war aren't really opposites of each other. They come from a place of passion, and they come from a place of great feeling. So the war doesn't necessarily have to come from hate. It can come just from a commitment to a greater thing, as it did, just at least, you know, on the surface in the Civil War, people cared about the idea that that brother was fighting brother, that some people were enslaved to other people. There were, of course, other things going on, economic things, other reasons for war, but this, that is emblematic of the kind of thing that happens in for a love deity, is that there are the desire that people are experiencing from love, from the passion, can, shake down the world as much as war can. So when we have this great feeling, love, desire, passion, sometimes jealousy, sometimes hatred, these are all kind of connected in our feeling abilities. We as humans are beings of feeling. So when we have all this feeling, we sometimes express it in violence. And I will say that I grew up in a house where we had on our wall, war is not healthy for children and other living things, hippie poster. I've been practicing nonviolent communication for over 20 years, and I always feel a little uncomfortable about violence. And when I see violence in the world, that makes me feel, unhappy, worried, concerned. I feel disappointed in that humans can't find a different way of connecting. But I am also very connected with love goddesses. So I understand that this is all connected to each other. Basically, when things need to change, we need that fire, that passion, the will to create change. If we only experienced love, unconditional love, kindness, nothing would change. All things would just stay static. But because sometimes things do need to change, because we're living in an imperfect world, we need the fire. And you can kind of think of Neptune and Aries as ideological fire, as the desire for things to be different, better. We don't necessarily all agree on what that means or looks like, but that is kind of the fire that we're talking about, the fire to change, the fire to become something else. But when we look out into the world and we see, the news is depressing, people are dying, people are being killed, soldiers, civilians, maybe in Iran, maybe somewhere else, because as I said, there's war happening all the time everywhere, or, there's always something going on that's an armed conflict. We, as humans, have trouble really understanding that or accepting that or not being upset by it, because we are deeply afraid of dying and we're afraid of losing. And that is part of the difficulty of living on the plane of form. And I have a video about the plane of form if you want to know more about that. But basically, we are a people that get attached. We're attached to people, to places, to stuff, to to the world of form, the world where we have flesh and blood and we take up space and the people around us take up space. But that's not the only world there is, right? There's also the world of spirit, the world where our um, our bodies aren't important, where we are connected to a bigger thing, to each other, maybe, to spirit, to divine source, to consciousness, to presence. And in that world, it doesn't matter if people are suffering or dying. And I'm not in any way excusing that war is something we want, but it has been a constant throughout human history. And in fact, even though we don't call it war, animals also kill other animals, mostly for food, but not always. Sometimes it's for fun. I remember I had a fish pond with these giant koi, 4 koi, in the fish pond where I used to live. And one morning I came out and 3 of the 4 koi had been pulled out of the fish pond, and one of them had been partially eaten, and the other 2 were just left. And probably that was a raccoon, and they weren't eating the fish for food, they were just fishing. So, humans aren't the only critters who can create violence for, I think it's probably never for no reason, but maybe not for a good reason. We on this planet, we live because we are harming something else. And as much as we might believe in harming none, there isn't really any way to do that unless you only eat things that fall off of trees. And I used to know some people who only ate things that fell off of trees, and they didn't seem very healthy. So I'm not sure that we are really, as humans, supposed to do that or able to do that, because harming ourselves is also a thing. So when we have to come to terms with the idea that things get broken, that things are harmed, that people do suffer, that may not be at all what we want. We want there to be peace, to be love, to be joy, to be at least contentment, to be kindness. Those are things that we might, as humans, prefer. But when there's a balanced state, there is no joy without sorrow. There is no love without hatred or unhappiness. These are things that are big feelings. To be balanced, you have to be in a place of non-attachment, non-feeling, non-connection to all the things. And I mean, that's something that we might or might not wish to aspire to, but that is a practice. It's a Zen practice to develop non-attachment, to come to a place of contentment rather than joy, rather than anger. So when we think about love deities like Inanna, Ishtar, Astarte, they are emotional beings, right? They have a lot of passion and energy and will, and they do things, they take action. So that's the Aries taking action. They're taking, going into the field of battle, going into the field of love. Everything is about forward motion. So in the myth of Inanna's descent, she decides to go to the underworld to visit her sister, possibly. There are many versions of this myth, Ereshkigal, and the goddess of the underworld. And she has to give up parts of herself to get to the underworld. She gives up one part in each of the 7 gates, and until she mortal coil to she has to let go of um, her her mortality, uh, her beingness, and she dies. But the death is a change, right? Is she's transformed, and she comes back and becomes a different, um, wiser being, a being of understanding. So the idea that she is dying to become born, she is understanding in a different way. She goes, it's a like process of not only initiation, but of metamorphosis, of transformation, of maturity, that she is able to understand herself in a different context. She understands her relationships in a different context. She understands her power in a different context through dying and being reborn, which is really what initiation is about. So when we look at other goddesses um, who are love goddesses, they are connected in some way also to war. Aphrodite and Aries, as I mentioned. Aphrodite was a love goddess. She's also jealous and sometimes petty, sometimes competitive. And her consort, her paramour, Aries, the god of war, um, and she had a very passionate relationship, which she didn't with her husband, Hephaestus, the builder god, the god of the forge. That was a much calmer relationship. So we have these deities who sometimes seem like they have opposing forces in them, but these are really two sides of the same coin. And this is a way that we can understand what we're going through right now. Aries says, act, conquer, begin, assert. And Neptune, the planet, the energy, says, dream, dissolve, idealize, sacrifice. And so together they produce ideals, visions, identities, moral causes, spiritual narratives, and imagined futures. And so we can look to that combination and see where it is in the world. What's happening? What are we, what is keeping us from understanding reality? What is reality? We have all these AI now, fake videos, and people will talk about stuff that may or may not be true, and it gets amplified, and we don't know what to believe anymore. That's a very Neptune kind of thing. We don't know what to believe. There's all kinds of information out there. Some of it's true, a lot of it isn't. And so, this is the veil. This is the way we don't see reality. And that's not only emblematic of our time, but it's also emblematic of the plane of form, because on the plane of form, where we can touch things and we experience things with our senses, it's not necessarily accurate. Because if we look to a different level, a molecular level, a subatomic level, things are happening in a way that we don't experience them on the plane of form. We can't smell them or touch them or see them without, a microscope, without some kind of way of enhancing that. There's so many colors that we are not aware of. There's so many scents that we're not aware of. A dog can smell things we can't smell, see things we can't see, and yet those things exist, but they're not part of our reality. So here we are living in this veil, veiled world where we can't see through to the other side with our normal eyes and our normal way of understanding the world through our senses. So that's what mythology helps us learn about. What is the nature of reality when we don't trust news, when we don't trust people, when we don't trust what we're seeing? What can we believe? So how do we know what is the truth? And I think that there isn't really an objective truth. We create truth with our belief in a lot of ways. What I mean by that is that what we think we're going to see is what we find evidence of, because our brains just ignore everything else. Our brains want to have like a logical, simple reality, and so our brains will ignore anything that doesn't fit into that logical, simple reality. So two people might see completely opposite things, and neither of them are right, because there isn't really an objective truth, at least not in that way. So how do we peel back the veil, look behind, and see what the nature of reality actually is? Or is that even a thing that we need to do? So when I think about what the nature of reality is, I think of unconditional love, of light, and I think of the space that we live in, the world of form, as a vessel, which might be broken, and as Leonard Cohen sings in the anthem, the light comes through the broken cracks. And so we see a little bit of the light in our world. We just don't see all of it because form gets in the way. So if you are in a place of feeling very depressed or concerned or worried about the world, about war, about violence, about struggle, about grief, about things that are uncomfortable, I'm not telling you they're not real. In some sense, they are real, but they are the manifestation of the brokenness, not the light that is beneath and trying to peek out behind. So what I invite you to do when you think about this particular period of time that we're starting to go through, and I'm not trying to divine what's going to happen. There will be wars because there's always wars. There will be love because there's always love. There'll be birth, there'll be death, there'll be whatever happens in between. And that is just part of the nature of the world of form in which our physical bodies live. But it's not all destructive. Not all manifestations are destructive. And when we see things breaking down in ways that make us feel uncomfortable, like the clutter of the world, so things like violence and struggle, those are things that are making room, that are breaking down old structures so that we can find new ways of being. And those might be good ways, they might not be good ways, but there is no change without conflict. There's no possibility of growth without decay. Those are necessary. It's part of balance. And so, we can embrace some of the manifestations of Neptune and Aries, which at its highest expression, it can be courageous compassion, it can be spiritual activism, it can be visionary leadership. It can be defense of vulnerable people. It can be inspired artistic revolutions. It can be a renewal of communal identity. It can be sacred courage. And when war happens, war can be So not condoning war, but war can be a way that people fight for justice and liberation and collective healing. So I would prefer there never to be war. I would prefer us never to have any violence and for people to treat each other with kindness and compassion and love 100% of the time. And perhaps someday we will get there, but I am unfortunately thinking that the world of form is not the place where that happens. That happens beyond the veil. That happens in the land of spirit, in the other planes of existence. But that doesn't mean that you, as an individual, can't embrace those higher ideals, that you, as an individual, can't take action towards a better world. Unfortunately, we don't all define that the same way, but whatever way you define the better world, you can, work towards, be a peaceful warrior for human dignity, spiritual truth, collective healing, justice, liberation. These are things that we can try to collectively grow towards. Neptune and Aries can show us things like fanaticism, hero worship, ideological extremism, romanticized violence, video games, comic books, movies. People can have savior complexes. They can have, identity warfare. They can emotionally manipulate through mythology that we are currently creating, because we are people of myth. Neptune clouds clarity. Aries accelerates action. So Neptune is the veil. Neptune is what the gauze that we are trying to see through. And, I guess I'm reminded of a time when I was driving in Southern California, and it was very foggy, and I couldn't see, 6 feet in front of me. And I pulled over to the side of the road, and a car went barreling past me, and then I heard a crash, because no one can see through fog like that, and something got in the way. And so there was a car accident. So that's kind of a Neptune and Aries thing. You can't see through the veil. Slow down. It will be uncomfortable to slow down. But that is something that, if we want to co-create a better world of form, we can resist some of the action that causes us to have destruction. We can take action that doesn't cause destruction. That's another way to feel the Aries energy. And we can ask ourselves, what vision are we willing to fight for, and how are we doing that fight? And that's the question that sits at the center of what ancient love and war deities are all about. The realization that passion, devotion, identity, and transformation are all expressions of the same sacred fire. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. I love you so much. And I hope that you join me again for the next time I make it here. Many blessings.